Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this virtual professional development opportunity that is brought to you by a wide range of Maine state educational organizations. My name is Joe Schmidt. I'm the Social Studies Specialist and Acting Coordinator of Secondary Education for the Maine Department of Education. I'm also joined today by the other groups that are partnering in today's workshop. We have the Maine State Historical Society, the Maine State Museum, the Maine State Library, and the Maine State Archives. So I'm going to take just a moment. I will let all of our presenters introduce themselves before I jump into the first part of our session today. And I will say Kathleen, Joanna, Allison, Heather, Kate. That's the order on my screen. Kathleen, Joanna, Allison, Heather, Kate.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Newman. I'm the Curator of Education and Public Programs at Maine Historical Society. Thanks everyone for being here with us today. I'm going to be talking about specifically the Maine Memory Network database and how teachers and students can access it to find and work with primary sources.
And I'm Joanna Toro from the Maine State Museum. I'm the chief educator here, and I'm so glad to spend the afternoon with you all. And we're all going to be talking about some of the resources that the museum has in various ways, but specifically our new collections database.
Great. I'm Allison Maxell. I'm the Director of Public and Outreach Services, Research and Innovation here at the Maine State Library. I'm going to be talking a little bit about our collections and what we have here at the Maine State Library for resources, but I'll be primarily focusing on our digital Maine library and one particular database within that resource and showing you how that can actually augment some of your classroom instruction.
I'm Heather Moran, and I'm an archivist here at the Maine State Archives. My specialty is reference and outreach, and in particular, the Civil War collections and land office collections. And I'll be showing you also around our repository on Digital Maine, as well as our brand new database called Archive Space. So thank you for joining us.
And I'm Kate Weber. I'm one of the educators at the Maine State Museum, and I'm going to be talking about the same things Joanna mentioned already. So I'm so glad to see all of you today.
Thank you to all of our presenters today. I will say I don't want to feel her left out. Devon, Berkeley, one of the interns at the Maine State Museum, is also joining us today. You will see some of her work later on in the series as she has been helping the Maine State Museum and working on their text sets that they've been putting together from the collections, which is a good place for us to start in this conversation because as I now kind of jokingly say when I'm working with this group of presenters, as part of the revision process, the Maine Learning Results, which were signed into law, the revised standards in 2019, part of that process was the highlighting of the importance of primary and secondary sources, especially primary sources in terms of bringing diverse perspectives and multiple views as we're engaging in historical conversation, geographical conversation, personal finance, economics, and civics and government, that all of these areas have primary sources specific to the learning and understanding of this content area. So as I was wrapping up the facilitation of the revision process, I had an idea one day that we should get all of the places in our state that contain and hold and process these primary sources, like the Historical Society, the museum, the archives, and the library. We should all get together and we should work on bringing together specific text sets related to topics in Maine's history is where it started and kind of bigger picture in general. And that's what started our work. That I will say idea, I almost said brilliant idea, although the other members in this group might say, it's not the best idea, Joe, you brought it to us and then you left. And we do all the work, and that is 100% true. I continue to be blown away by the work that these four organizations have done in pulling these sets together. And as you see going forward, the rest of the series is working around these text sets that have been curated and developed into educational resource tools for educators to use as kind of your one-stop shopping for primary sources related to different topics about Maine and Maine's history. And so the reason we're here today is if we're focusing on that importance of primary documents, primary sources, and those multiple views, again, a big component not only of the Maine Learning Results in Social Studies, but one of the things I spend a lot of time teaching and talking about with students and then educators as well is the best practices and pedagogy related to this. How are you engaging students in learning? What type of learning is going on? And what is the process in which you'd engage with these pieces is really the way in which you get students to be excited about the learning. I think a lot of us grew up and went to school in the traditional method, the sit and get, the memorizing of names and dates. And there's so much more to history in that, where we're actually wanting to turn our students into historians or archivists, just like Heather, where they go through and these pieces of our history or our past or these topics are given to students with a question, and then students wrestle with the information and do actually what a historian would do, or what a researcher would do, or what an economist would do, or a geographer would do, or a political scientist would do. We want students emulating those pieces because that's really where the learning happens. And the example I always give when I took my geography class in high school, we did a lot of color coding of maps. And it took me a long time to realize that's not what an actual geographer does. There's more into it in geographical thinking. And to get students to do this, we need to give them those same documents and resources that those people use, in this case, historians or geographers, and then give them opportunity to practice that. You're going to find out today and in the coming months in this series that those tools are available for educators here in Maine. Thankfully, to the hard work of all of our presenters, and this summer, Devon, working on our latest set, we have primary source text sets together, but as you're going to learn about today, the availability of the resources and each of these 4 organizations is already out there for you to use. And we're going to show you, starting this series, about how you navigate their websites and their systems so that you too can be a historian, a librarian, museum curator, or where Heather's going to start us off today, to be an archivist here in Maine. You're going to want to know how to navigate the Maine State Archives. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Heather, and she's going to show you all that the Maine State Archives has for educators at their disposal.
Thank you, Joe. I often tell people I have really the coolest job in the world because as an undergrad, I was a history and political science major, and that morphed into grad school and a career as a librarian and archivist. And I can amuse myself all day amongst 100 million pages of the Maine State Archives collections. So whatever sparks my curiosity, I can usually find it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see my PowerPoint. Let's get that up and going. Okay, and I'm just going to give a high-level overview of some of my favorite collections here in the archives, and I'll show you how to do a quick dive into our databases. So if you have any questions, feel free to just kind of shout out, and I'll see what I can do to answer those for you. So, as I said, I'm the archivist here at the Maine State Archives, and the archives is responsible for holding all of the records of Maine State government. That includes the branches of government. We've got executive, obviously, the governor's office and executive council, the legislative branch of government, as well as court records, and also all of the other state agencies, including the defunct agencies that either have gone defunct or they've morphed into different names. So we have a vast amount of records. So how can our collections help your students? So obviously, as social studies educators, you are covering the length and breadth of Maine history and world history. So we can typically help you with most of those inquiries, everything from European exploration. I would direct you to our Baxter rare map collection, right up through, the emergence of modern America, from suffrage, women's suffrage, to World War I, up through contemporary topics under discussion in the legislature. So the Baxter Rare Map Collection is a pretty neat collection couple hundred maps. These were gifted to the state by James Finney Baxter, who was a 6-term mayor of Portland. His son Percival became governor of Maine. These are quite colorful. These are fun for kids to look at. This one in particular is one of the oldest ones that we have. It's from 1684. It's a depiction of Nouvelle France, but basically it's the eastern seaboard of North America from the tip of Virginia all the way up through Nova Scotia. And it's fun for kids to take a look at, what early explorers thought the land looked like, as well as the very colorful decorations on the maps as well. They're quite artistic. Talking about colonization and revolution, of course, the American Revolution and the early settlement of Maine. We have the original 1637 charter from King Charles I of England, basically gifting the entire area of Maine to Ferdinand the Gorgeous in order to settle that for the crown. This is the original document. Like I said, it's quite difficult for people to read because of the handwriting, but it's a fascinating piece of our history. Again, some more maps. The one on the right-hand side of your screen is one of my favorites. It's this weird pointy depiction of the province of Maine. I often pull this out when I'm doing in-classroom mapping exercises with kids because they think it's just weird and funny looking, and it doesn't look anything like the state of Maine today. And it's a bit of a fanciful depiction of what the early surveyors thought Maine would look like. The northern and northeastern borders are yet undefined. Revolutionary War, of course, we have fewer records from the Revolution and from the War of 1812, just because Maine was still part of Massachusetts at that time. But we do have, for example, a listing of soldiers who fought with General Washington at Valley Forge. And we have these really neat affidavits of service from hundreds of Revolutionary War soldiers in order to receive payment for their services. In the early 1800s, they had to submit signed affidavits basically telling what their service was in that war. The handwriting, again, is difficult for some people, but it's fascinating because it's very, very detailed, and these are available on Digital Maine. War of 1812, again, fewer records, but people doing a genealogy dive into their family history, or students studying these wars can find soldiers and track them through. Early statehood and expansion, you can't have that discussion without talking about Maine's bicentennial, which was in 2020, and talking about the Constitution of our state. This is one of the centerpieces of the State Archives collections. This is the digitized version of the Constitution. The original is written on parchment, is very large, and we have that safely kept away after it was discovered decades ago, rolled up in an elevator shaft over at the Capitol. So we're very careful of it. This is something I really like to show students because you have the original Constitution, the final version, but we also have this draft copy created by attendees at the Constitutional Convention. What I like about it is that it shows the wordsmithing and the thought that went into crafting each part of the Constitution. There's crossed out words, there's replaced phrases. It's really an interesting insight into what the crafters of the Constitution were thinking. We also have a large number of Wabanaki related documents, of course, showing the troubled and tangled history between the different tribes and the state of Maine. So that has its own separate section right on Digital Maine, and I'll show that to you in a few minutes. Some of the unique collections, I mean, everything's unique, but this is kind of a fun one. This is our trademark collection. Every business that wanted to do business within the state of Maine had to submit trademark applications to the Secretary of State. And so we have a wonderful collection of patent medicines and blueberry advertisements, all sorts of things that you can think of relating to the history of commerce in Maine. We also have extraditions. This is a collection I just finished digitizing last year. This one in particular is interesting because it relates to the famous case of Atticus the slave, who stowed away on a Maine schooner and made it all the way to Maine before being chased and captured by slave catchers. And this back and forth between the slave states and Maine prior to the Civil War is still on the books today. So it's a really interesting case history, in relations between the states. And another prize in our collection is a printed copy of the Declaration of Independence. People often ask, oh my gosh, is this the real thing? Well, it's not the real handwritten version that we all know about at the National Archives. This is the printed copy. But what I like to point out to people is that the Declaration actually references the burning of Portland right in its text. And people don't often realize that little old Maine has its place right on the Declaration. One of the largest collections we have is the Civil War collection. It's the most comprehensive collection of all of the states, and upwards of 180,000 pieces of correspondence, from enlistment papers to militia, military correspondence, and that sort of thing. Of course, one of the key pieces of that collection, particularly for people in Maine, is Joshua Chamberlain's battle report immediately following the battle at Gettysburg in July of 1863. He wrote this 8-page report in which he details the 20th Maine's experience during the turning point of the Civil War. So, as I mentioned, 2 databases to explore our collections. And Allison and I are going to be sort of sharing a discussion about this, so I don't want to do too deep of a dive into it. But this is Digital Maine. This is a shared repository between the Maine State Library and the Maine State Archives. And this is what the landing page looks like. You get there by going to digitalmaine.com. And as you can see on the PowerPoint, I've got the links right there. If you want to explore just the archives side of the collection, I've put that extra link down below on the lower right-hand part of the slide. So it's digitalmaine.com/archives. And let's do a quick little dive into that so you can see what it looks like. So I hope everybody can see that. If you can't, let me know. So this is what
Heather, I think you might have to switch off the PowerPoint view and over to your web browser. We're still seeing the...
Oh, you are? Okay. Sorry about that. Can you see it now?
Still your PowerPoint.
Let me close out that.
Heather, try and unshare your screen and then reshare it with the web browser window.
Okay, let's give this a try. How's that?
Yep, we got it.
Yay, okay. So sorry about that little glitch there. So this is what the State Archives side of the Digital Maine looks like. I always tell people, some of the stuff at the top here, like Archives Advisory Board, and stuff at the bottom, like records management documents, that's not pertinent so much for the everyday researcher. So I have them click right into Archive Services. And this drills down a little bit farther into what we've got in the collection. So for example, the Adjutant General records are broken out into a Rustic War, Civil War, World War I. It's a little bit more faceted We've got the executive branch, executive council records, some online exhibits that we've done, legislative material. Again, because we have such a vast collection across all of the branches and state agencies, not everything is digitized. It won't be probably in my lifetime. We're working on it really fast. So let me show you, for example, if you want to click into maps, it's pretty simple. You can do a simple browse like this. For example, if you want to look in Kennebec County, we have all of these atlases digitized. Everything up here is at a high resolution. It's freely downloadable. There's no paywall or anything like that. It's all right there. And we've put it in such a format that hopefully it's accessible for most people's internet speeds. So you can do a full-size download, or you can do just like a medium or a thumbnail. So let's go back. And stop me if I'm zipping along too fast here. So one way to drill down a little bit more is you can do an advanced search. So let's say you wanted to search the Civil War collection, and you wanted all of Civil War materials, but you didn't want anything about Joshua Chamberlain. So you can click into advanced search. Right up here in this left side search bar here, right below it is advanced search. You can select all fields. I usually just leave it as all fields rather than trying to do a subject or title search, just because that broadens your scope. So you can do Civil War. I try to put things, phrases in quotes, to be a little bit more specific in the search. For Digital Maine, you don't necessarily have to, I've found, although some other databases you do. And then if you want to exclude Joshua Chamberlain, you click on that little plus sign on the right-hand side, and over here on the left where it says and, I'm gonna change that to not. So we want Civil War, but not Chamberlain. Okay, and we're searching within archive services, which again is specific to the Maine State Archives. You could go broad, you could look at all of Digital Maine, but for our purposes here, I'm just going to show you our collection. So then you just click search. And it brings up 5,520 results. And that is accurate. We do have, like I said, a vast collection of Civil War material, and it has excluded everything related to Chamberlain. We have over 2,000 Civil War portraits, carte de visite photographs. So that's a large part of what the search is returning. Now you'll notice over here, you can do keyword searching. You can drill down even more. If you wanted, for example, within the Civil War collection, you just wanted 1st Maine Heavy Artillery related material. These are soldiers from the 1st Maine Heavy. And if you scroll all the way through, eventually you'll get to the documents. So not to make you too dizzy, let's back that out. You can also X out of 1st Maine Heavy Artillery, so that again broadens the search back out to all Civil War, not just the 1st Maine. You can select by correspondence only. I don't know if you saw how I got there. So again, you can look under publications. You can look for certain soldiers, correspondence by town. It's a really broad array of material. One other thing I wanted to show you too is, let's go back, start the search over again. Sometimes it's useful when you're searching to do an asterisk at the end of a term. For example, slave versus slavery. And I can show you why that's important. So if you do a search for, let's say, slavery. It's returning 95 results. And if you go back, and we're going to put in an asterisk instead. That gives you 101 results. The difference being just the difference in the spelling of the word. So slavery is a little bit more of a narrow term than slave asterisks. So that's a key way to do a search. Let's see. A lot of our material has a transcription with it, which is really helpful, particularly for kids or other researchers that have a hard time with handwriting. And I can show you some of those. So let's get back to, sorry about that. How about 2nd Maine Regiment? Not all of our items have been transcribed. It's just simply a workforce issue. There's only so many volunteers to try to transcribe. But if there is a transcription available, it's right here. You can freely download it. Those transcriptions are searched in the search algorithm. So for example, if I were to put in a search for, let's say Camden, Maine, it would return, for example, hospital returns. And you're thinking, well, how does it find Camden in that? It's because there is Camden within the transcription. It's nowhere in the description of the item, but it's within the transcription. So that's helpful. So a couple other things. I know we're starting to run out of time here, and I want to make sure that my colleagues have plenty of time to talk. We do have a new database called Archive Space. This is still a work in progress. We only just opened this up to the public in March. So we've loaded all of our collections into it, and now the archivists are working on refining it. So for example, we can come up with, how many items do you find with smallpox? And this would tie into our primary source sets on pandemics. So a number of these items are digitized. You can find those in our digital archives, everything that has an associated image. And there it is. And if you click into this, links right back to Digital Maine. So these two databases are linked, and a pretty handy tool for doing a deeper dive into our collections. And I believe with that, I am pretty much out of time. Am I correct, Joe? Joe's gone.
You are correct. You are at
I
time.
am correct. I always tend to be really wordy on these things. So I'm just going to stop right there. And if anybody has questions, please feel free to reach out to me at the archives. And Joe has my contact information at the end of this presentation.
Thank you, Heather, for showing us all of that. I am, again, Joanna from the Maine State Museum, and I also want to dig into our database that's pretty new as well, that can be a good source of primary sources and a resource for students and teachers to kind of look around and dig up some materials that would be useful to them. Kate is going to give you a good rundown of the database in just a second. I'm going to give you a little bit of background to start off with, because the museum is closed right now. We, like the other agencies in the cultural building, the archives and the library, are dealing with our building getting retrofitted and mechanically updated, all sorts of kind of unpleasant things that are necessary to make it run. So our objects are not available to people to come in and walk in and see. And so when we figured out that we're going to be closed for quite some time, a couple of years, the museum decided that we really need to have objects accessible in some way. And since we did have a new database that would actually allow us to share this with the public versus our old dusty one that was kind of clunky, then we really accelerated the project of making this accessible via our website. So it's new. We're still loading stuff on it. I think there's around 180 things on it right now, and more to come. The museum in general has over 800,000 things in its collection. So like Heather was referencing, it's probably not going to be done in our lifetime of getting everything up there, but we're working on it, and some more things will be coming to you soon. I also was going to share my screen because the museum, as we're closed, we also do have other materials, and I wanted just to show everybody where you are going to find those. And so this is the museum's website. You're on the home page here. You can say, hey, here we're telling you it's closed. You can learn more about that process if you want to over here. And it's, our little messages about what's going on here and what our progress is. And also telling you that it's going to be a while since we can get school groups back into the museum doing programs with them. But we do have a lot of materials under our Learn section. And this will be where you would go to find things related to some of the materials we're going to talk to you about in the next session or two with our primary source sets over here. We also have our online learning resources. So there's lesson plans here, many of them based on some of the prior exhibits that we had in the last few years. And these are all accessible here as well. And if you're looking for something a little bit less dense and you want something just for fun, we've got some fun activities here that also have some really great content attached to them that we're constantly updating and adding to over in this section here. We're always adding to that and bringing up new ideas. We've got some fun videos over here on the bottom. Heather was talking about maps, and I was just thinking about one of the maps that we have online as well. And this is an interactive. So if you go and look up exploration with Heather's collection, this is a next stop that would really work with that. And it does, it's kind of fun and allows you to explore this map and a journal that's attached to it. It's especially good if you're talking about the bicentennial. So just a few things that show you where we're kind of got materials for teachers. We are also going to be doing some Zoom webinars and live Zoom programming as well. So stay tuned to come and hear about that. That's going to be kind of in this section right over here. And if you have questions for us about any of this, please let Kate or I know, and we can get back to you and see what kind of resources we can push your way. So now I'm going to pass it on to Kate so that she can walk you through what is available right now.
Yeah, I'm coming back to the museum's website. If you are on our homepage, the way to find our online database is to go over to the collections tab here. You can also do this on, site can't be reached. And you can click the link to explore the online collection database. You'll find we've got an introduction page that's explaining a lot of what Joanna already mentioned, a little bit of an overview of what's in there. And the big caveat is that, yeah, we're talking about, 180 or so items that are in right now. But if you check back in the future, there'll be more. And there are a few highlighted items here. I'm going to click on one of them just to give you a sense of what an individual record looks like. So on each record page, you will get the catalog number, which is how we identify the item, the name of it. An alternative name might be something is more commonly known as. If it has a title, that shows up here. So this is a beaded powder horn and dance rattle. We don't know the maker name, but we know that it was a Wabanaki person, so that's here. Location, date, materials, measurements. There are details here. And then the notes section might be what you find the bulk of your helpful material in for students. If there's anything we know about the item that's possible to convey, we have that listed here. Some of these records you'll see don't have anything in the note item. It just might be a basket, and we know the dimensions and what it's made out of, but there's no backstory to it. So as you browse, you'll find that some things have more than others. If you're hoping to work with the image files, you can hover over the image to get a close-up view. What I often like to do is do a right click or a control click if you're on a Mac. You can save the image to your computer. You can open it in a new tab and get a nice full picture of that detail. And there are some notes kind of on a similar vein here. We're totally happy to have these used for educational purposes. If for some reason you wanted more detailed information about using the image, we have a contact here. And if you find that you want to know more about the item than is in here, I know my coworkers are going to hate me for suggesting this, but you can reach out to us. We have an email address on every record that'll take you to someone who can answer more questions if you have them. It is a big priority of ours, and I know of my colleagues that that this be a good resource for Maine's teachers. So to walk you through, we started from the home page and clicked on a random thing for that. I'm going to give one caveat that I know is a little confusing. We've got two different menu bars here. This top menu is just the regular museum website. So if you click on that, you'll get directed to a different part of the museum. Everything below this orange line is referring to the database. So for the purposes of this, just, you can ignore everything above that orange line. We already tried a home. There's a quick search window here where you can type in some keywords. If you don't have a great sense of what you're looking for, I usually like to come into the Browse tab here. The default option is to search by subject and theme, but you can also change it to artist maker, place made. So in this case, I think this is probably the most helpful one for educators, because you might have a sense like, I want to connect my students to kids in different time periods, so I could click on the children theme. On education, you might be doing a unit on immigration. So I'll show you, if you click one of these themes, it's going to pull up all of the items that relate to that in some ways. If you find something kind of mysterious, you're like, what does this blueberry winnower have to do with immigration? It might be that somewhere in our internal database, that's a word that's tagged in that section, and it might not show up in here. That's another one where you're welcome to reach out to us, but you'll find that some of these might have stronger connections than others. And I'll just go back as well to the browse, because I know that we always find our visitors love to find things from their town, from their county. So you can check into the place made. Some are really, we know it was in the USA, but you can get pretty specific with these location terms. Maybe there's a student in Farmington who wants to look at local history. They can go in here and see, in this case, oh, yep, earmuffs. So we've got the browse feature there. The display tab over here can change it to just images, or just the description here if you want to do that. The search tab is not quite as fancy as the advanced search that we saw Heather walk us through, but it does let you search by person, date, place, object name, title, or just a general all field search. This might come in handy if you know somebody's last name is Smith, but you don't want blacksmithing to appear. You could put Smith in the people tab. It's just a nice way to be able to refine that a little bit. Our exhibit tab is definitely going to be expanded on. At this point in time, we only have one of our exhibits up in this database, and that was our bicentennial exhibit. So you'll find a description about it here. If you click on that link, it takes you to the items that we have that were part of that exhibit. And you can click into any of these and find more information in that record. The last thing I want to show you on the record page is that if the item was connected to an exhibit, you can find it here. So you might just be browsing through, come across this waistcoat, and find that it was in an exhibit. You can click that tab to go to other items. Related is also helpful here because it can connect to other records that have the same object name. The maker in this case is unknown, so we're going to get a lot of unknown makers if we click on that. You can find anything else that was made in London, England. So that can be a nice way to search through. But rather than just talk at you, we wanted to give you a little bit of a chance to explore this on your own. I know some of you might be working on iPads or devices that don't let you switch between the two. So I'm going to give folks a little bit of a head start if they want to look on their own. But if you can't, don't worry. We'll walk you through that as well. But as the first thing here, so we've got our little scavenger hunt. So you can go at this time to the Maine State Museum's website and navigate over to the collections tab. For this activity, you can either type your responses in the chat. If you want, you can unmute yourself and talk out loud. I know we don't have too many folks, so that shouldn't be a problem. And as I mentioned, you can go at your own pace or follow along. I'm going to be pasting these questions into the chat as well so that you can have them up there without the screen share on distracting you. Okay, so your first mission in our scavenger hunt is to find a shako. We're going to be looking for what it is, when it was made, and how you can tell that it was used in Maine. So I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to paste those questions into the chat so you have them in front of you. And I'll also put up a link to the database just in case you're having trouble finding that.
And if you are having, questions as you're doing this or challenges, just shout them out so we can make sure that we get those covered.
All right, so we're looking for a shako, S-H-A-K-O.
And Kate, maybe you should maybe bringing up the website again, and let's show people how to get to the collections, because we just went over all that detailed stuff, and sometimes that's the stuff that goes like, oh yeah, how did I start that?
Absolutely. All right, so I'll share my screen again and walk through that. All right, so if I were doing this challenge, oh, and I see we have Joanna, would you mind monitoring the chat, and you can say if anyone's found anything?
Looks like we do have one answer. We have somebody, Carol has found that a shako is a military hat. Let's see if other people can confirm that or have any idea of when it was made or how it was used.
Okay, so I've navigated over to collections.
Kathleen also found that it's the same thing. So we've got two military hats, and Carol is coming back with more information. We're doing well today. June 9th, 1820. I got that, June. Yeah, so you guys are good.
All right, so I went for just the general search here. I pulled it up. I just did the word there. Okay, I've got the record here. From here, I could find the name and the date and that it's a military hat, but I couldn't answer the last question. Do we have any responses to that yet?
We also have Carol put in that it is an early representation of the Maine seal.
Yeah, that's the giveaway. All right, so if I click into the record, zooming in here, even if you didn't read the description, you might notice that there's that classic Maine state seal with a dirigo crest, says Maine on it, and then there's a little bit about that in the description here.
We just couldn't resist asking you about a shako because it's just such a great word. So we needed to give you something that was challenging but pretty accessible. And now you all know that a shako is a military hat. And a fancy one at that.
Our next question here is, all right, so we've done the general search. This time I'm going to ask folks to go under search and go under people and look for Jane Otis Pryor. Again, I'll put that in the chat, but we're looking for, let's start with just part one. What did she make? What was it that Jane Otis Pryor made? So you can get the spelling right.
We really wanted to make this section a little bit more interactive so that you get to do the kind of work that might lead to some more research, but also that your students might be able to do as well if you wanted them to go in here and do some of the researchers like a historian or an archivist might be doing.
So I'm going into the advanced search for this one. I'm going into people. Let's see what Jane made. Go down to search the collection. Okay, so we've got a couple things that have shown up here. This I think is a good example because it's one of those things where you wonder, why, what does Jane have to do with this painting?
And
but we
Kate,
have something in the chat.
Yeah, we have both Carol and Roxanne have found out that Jane has created a friendship box.
Great, so let's check it out. All right, here's Jane's friendship box. Close-up view with a painted scene on it. And this is one where nothing is written about it. Your students might have to kind of solve this mystery on their own.
You can see that when we've put these objects in, we've tried to put in as many photographs as we can. Sometimes we just don't have it available to us, but if it's been photographed and we've got it from all angles, then we try to make that available to you. So you can really some students could really do some good observations about, especially something like this that has imagery on it. And even on the bottom of it, where there is a really hard to read transcription of some sort. Kind of makes it a little bit, gives you a sense that even though this is on a computer screen, it's got a three-dimensionality to it.
Okay, so part two of the scavenger hunt. Pull up this. Okay, so from this record, we're using that related feature. So follow the link in the related section at the bottom of the record to find something else made in Cumberland County. Give us its name and date. And you're going to find a lot of things that it could be. Let me paste that into the chat. And just as a reminder, if we are in a record here, you scroll down to related, and we've got, I guess this is specifically Portland that's tagged here. So you'll find a lot of options. We're just looking for the name and date of one thing you find that looks interesting to you.
And if your students or you are working with one of these things that doesn't have any information and you come across a really cool fact and you want to pass it on to us, you can see that there's a note there from our curators that we're always updating records. And we have had the public come in and say, I know that object. I know the person in that photograph. And we've been able to kind of track down a mystery. So we're always open to that. And we have Carol and Crystal have found things. So Carol has found a quilt square that's from 1870 to about 1900. And Crystal has found a military banner from 1833. And Kathleen has an ambrotype, which is the portrait of Chester D. Whitney and Naomi S. Whitney, which is dated 1855, approximately 1855 to 1860. Got more things coming in. Linda found a painting, which is the original view of the State House in 1834, which is a favorite around here that we've used on exhibit a few times. And I think it actually might be in the governor's office at the moment.
Yeah, and scrolling through, I clicked the link too, and those things are all showing up here, which is great. Yeah, so you could get that information just from here, but if you think, okay, what I want to find out what Chester and Naomi look like, you can click into that and find, oh, here are their portraits. Great. All right, so one final thing that we've got for you to find today. Now, this one, I didn't even clear this with Joanna because I'm actually doing a plug at the same time for our social media channels, which I kind of sneakily got in here. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so this is going to be our slide here. Our real world simulation. All right, so picture the scene. You are scrolling through, let's say Instagram, and you come across a post from the Maine State Museum. And this one was from, let's see, July 27th, a couple weeks ago. So it's a baseball that is connected to the explorer Robert Peary. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, like that's cool. My students like baseball. I would love to try to trick them into liking history by talking about this baseball for a while and what it has to do. So there's usually, you know, we have silly things in our social media posts. It's not usually the scholarship you see elsewhere, but there's some helpful information in here. Let's take a look. You have to scroll down. Okay, how many trips did he go to the Arctic? Why is he famous? But when you scroll down to the end, if we've done our job right, everything has its object number attached to it. So on this post, the thing you'd be looking for are these numbers. Now I chose this as both a good and a bad example because these items are not in the online database yet. But again, getting my coworkers in trouble, if you contacted the museum and you had those numbers, they would be able to give you information about it. So that's an example. And the one we're going to work on together in the database is this. So if you were online, maybe on our website, you saw this image you thought was really interesting and you wanted to learn more, your final scavenger hunt task from us is to figure out what this is and when and where it was made. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that into the chat, the number, so you don't have to read it out.
And I should say, while Kate is doing that, our collection staff and our curators are working on putting a whole bunch more stuff on the website and on the collection database. And so that should be happening at the end of August. So if you really want to see all the new stuff, that would be a great time, you know, September 1st, go on there and see what happens.
While you're working on that, I'm going to go ahead and do my own search here. Let's see, for this one, I could do an advanced search. I could do a general search. But I'm going to go ahead and I've copied down the object number. I'm just going to put that object number, I think, into search in all fields.
So Crystal has found the object, and she is telling us that it's a brooch, a silver brooch, according to Carrie.
Great. Let's see if we find when we pull it up here. Okay, I pulled it up and we've gotten several options from these numbers. It looks like they've got similar numbers with those 86s in them, but I'm looking for 86.4.1. So it should be, oops, pretty simple for me to go in and find the right number. And click on that record. Yeah.
And according to Crystal, it was when it was made was 1775, and Carol put then that it is a Sopa Pamela, I know I'm murdering that name, trade silver brooch, 1775 to 1830 approximately, and it was made in Canada. And Roxanne is confirming that it was Quebec, Montreal specifically. So you guys have definitely dug through and got it all.
Yeah, that's great. This is an item we like because the notes field is actually pretty filled out on this one. And in this case, we owe the amount of detail we know about this to Donald Soktoma, who's the Penobscot tribal historian, and he gave information about what the name means, how this would work in the community, and things like that. So again, we've got these nice images in different lighting, so you can really see the detail there. But this is another cool piece of Maine history. All right, so thank you so much, everyone. I hope you had a little bit of fun exploring there, and we are going to turn it over next to Allison in the Maine State Library.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Joanna and Kate. That was the first time that I had actually seen that as well, and it's quite impressive. So I'm going to share my screen. I do have a PowerPoint. And I will. I'm trying to get down to my slide version. I will stop sharing for 1 minute. And slideshow. Beginning. And can you see it now?
We saw it for a minute, but I think it's gone away again, Allison.
Okay. I had trouble with this before, so.
If you want, I can open
Can you
it up.
share it?
Yep, yeah, and just tell me, let me know when you want to go to the next slide.
Okay. And I'm working with 2 different monitors here, so let me
That always makes it confusing.
get out. Okay. So let me go back to my screen here. Okay, there we go. Sorry, folks. So basically, I'm Allison Maxell. I'm the Director of Public and Outreach Services, Research and Innovation at the Maine State Library. Today, I will be sharing information about the Maine State Library, who we are, and the collections, resources, and services we provide. Then I will actually introduce you to one of our online resources, the Digital Maine Library. I will highlight some basic navigation tools and specific features that hopefully will help you become familiar with the resource. And then we will plan to finish with an interactive activity. Due to the limited time allotment today, I'll probably be moving through the slides a little quickly, but I will make sure my slide deck is made available to you along with other resources after the presentation today. So let's get started. We'll move to the next slide. So about the Maine State Library, while this slide speaks to our mission and who we serve, basically today and every day, the Maine State Library is working to meet the educational, informational, recreational, and cultural needs of Maine citizens. And we as librarians are all about access, and we want to facilitate your ability to get the information you need where you need it. Next slide. So I'm pleased to report we are now at our new temporary location. We're at 242 State Street, just kind of in the backyard of where the cultural building was. We expect to be here until such times the renovations are completed at the cultural building. And as Kate and Joanna and Heather had intimated, we're anticipating that to be a couple of years. So that kind of puts a new definition to temporary, but We are able to be open. Right now, we're only open from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, but at some point in the future, we're hoping to add evening and Saturday hours again. Next slide. So in terms of the Maine State Library collections, we are primarily Maine focused. We have a strong nonfiction and research collections, and then the state, county, town histories, town reports, newspapers, genealogy, government documents, maps, and other materials, all designed to provide a comprehensive coverage of Maine history and government. They're all well represented. Next slide. We also have some special collections. This current slide lists some of those. If you go to the website at the top of the page and you clicked on that, it would take you to a page. And then if you click on the individual title of the different collections, you would find a brief description and annotations for each of the collections. Next slide. So in addition to our print sources, we have several online sources. So of course, there's our regular Maine State Library catalog. Ursus is our online catalog that we actually share with the University of Maine system and the Bangor Public Library. Minerva would be the public library system. So we're actually on a separate database. The Digital Maine Library, which is the resource I'm going to feature today and why it's highlighted, that is an online resource that provides access to a collection of full text articles and abstracts from magazines, newspapers, and reference books that are all from reputable sources. The Download Library is really our source for ebooks and audiobooks. And then Learning Express is free to learn online, but it actually provides a comprehensive selection of educational resources for basic skills mastery, academic success, job preparation, career advancement, and there are also some popular software tutorials, internet instruction, and basic computer instruction. Digital Maine Repository is a partnership of the Maine State Library, Maine State Archives, and community institutions. Heather spoke to that. We are also represented in that, but I chose not to highlight that today, as I knew Heather was featuring some of the archive materials. But you can also, we have people resources, and so the other part of the slide is get help with any materials requests, photocopying, reproducing. We have reference librarians here available to assist you with research and quick facts. You can actually book a librarian class. We have genealogy classes, and we have some curated web resources on our website, which is at the top of the slide. Next slide. So about the Digital Maine Library. So for our purposes today, we're going to feature one online resource, and that's the Digital Maine Library. While it's not Maine focused like what my other colleagues have shown, it's still a great online learning tool. You'll find tons of helpful tools for every subject, and particularly with the end of summer, there's a whole new year of learning. So you should be able to find resources in here, not only for teachers and young learners from kindergarten through college, but teachers particularly. You should be able to find some really neat educator tools, and your students will get easy access to factual information from some of the age-specific databases like World Book Student and National Geographic Kids. So how do you access the Digital Maine Library? Next slide. So the Digital Maine Library may be accessed from any public school or academic library, home or business. So it's all accessible via remote sites. The state portal, and you may want to jot this down, the state portal is located at https://librarydigitalmaine.org. You can also get to it through our website, or even if you put it in your browser or Google search, it would come up and then you could just link to it. We actually use geolocation as the first layer of authentication. So this allows us to see that you are located in Maine and that you have access to the product. There are only some instances and some locations where you might be prompted to enter a library card, barcode, or username and password that you can create. But for the most part, it should be pretty seamless as far as getting to it. So next slide. So what are we looking at here? So to the right is a screenshot of the Digital Maine Library landing page. I have highlighted some of the important features and navigation tools. Number one, up at the top, where you see about video tutorials, Gale collections, and need assistance. That's all about support. Here you will find database tutorials, further information about Gale collections, and Digital Maine Library assistance. Down at the next bar, number 2, this is more about helpful quick facts. You can get a little bit of information about getting around the Digital Maine Library, more like a frequently asked question kind of format. You can get an A to Z index of the products, and you can actually do a multi-database search by just clicking on that button. That's what we call our power search. Then down here we have a really neat tool. This sift and sort allows us to narrow your search to resources, whether it be subject, whether it be the type of the resource, or the audience. And then down below is the actual databases. And so you have the database, the title. You can just click on the title and you can enter into that resource. Down below is a little description of what the contents of that resource contains. And then you have below some meta tags. And so again, you can also click on these meta tags. So next page. So we refer to this as the power of the tags. What you can do is if you click on the tags, you can actually get a customizable bookmarkable page for all databases for that particular age group or subject that you chose. And so here, I could actually copy that link and then push that forward, say, into my classroom if I wanted them to actually review those databases that I had collected for that particular subject or topic. So the tags are really quite useful, and you'll find them throughout in different locations. Next slide. So now let's take a look at the actual database that we're going to highlight today. This is Gale in Context Middle School. To the right is the database landing page. We'll be using this later in our interactive exercise. This database was specifically created for middle school students. This resource combines reference content with age-appropriate videos, newspapers, magazines, including more than 1.6 million articles, as well as primary sources. And if you click, Kate, the next thing will pop up on the slide. So this database also provides cross-curricular content aligned with national and state curriculum standards, allowing students to create connections between subject areas and to truly put topics into larger cultural, social, and historical contexts. Click. And you can enhance teaching and learning. So you'll find a vast array of resources, papers, projects, presentations, all that bolster that development of critical thinking, problem solving, effective communication skills. And then you have the ability to push those out and integrate those resources into your classroom setting. Next page. So it's pretty easy to navigate this database. This is the way they've organized things. So it's easy to access all the premium resources by, one, browsing or searching for topics of interest. You can explore content organized by type, and then you can click on individual result titles and actually view and use the videos, documents, and more. Next slide. So the basic search is really what it's the default. You can just find information based on any simple search terms. And this is often a good place to start your research. While we'll be not going through this today, you can, like what Heather illustrated, you can also run a more targeted or customized search by clicking the advanced search option beneath or to the side of the basic search box. And then you can see over here, the advanced search provides the option to select specific search fields. And then if you scroll down the page, you can also include search options to limit results by document type, content level, and more. Next page. So in addition to searching, Gale in Context Middle School is designed to make it easy for you and your students to browse for topics of interest. You can browse topics by subject or view all. You can see the little browse topics up here. If you click, Kate, you'll see this drop-down box that gives you the opportunity to see if there are certain pages based on categories of interest. If you click again, Kate, this actually gives you the opportunity to go to curated overviews and results. When you click the title of one of these topics right here, you can access this curated view. This one was Myths, Legends, and Tales. And then this contains an overview and image related to the topic, and that then organizes and provides access to various types of content. For instance, it could be reference materials, magazine articles, videos, and you can see them all highlighted here. And then you would just simply click the header for a content type if you wanted to review the results. Next slide. So here's an example of some of those types of results. So depending on the topic you search or browse, you will find a wide variety of content types. So because we are interested in primary resources, next slide, let's take a look at what might be included in those. So the primary resources include speeches, letters, and personal accounts from key points in history. Many contain commentary or introductions to help students place these sources in context as shown in the pop out on the right. So here was a letter from an 11-year-old girl to Lincoln. And down here is the pop out where it provides some context for why an 11-year-old girl might be writing to Lincoln. The other piece you don't want to dismiss because it can be somewhat interesting because it will pull in that cross-curriculum approach is some of the creative works. They consist of full text poems, plays, stories, and more, and often include notes to aid understanding as shown in the pop-out and add to the interpretation. So here, the road not taken, and the speaker expresses his regret at human limitations, or he must make a choice. So it's just an opportunity to kind of analyze what's taking place there. So next slide. So another nice feature, if you support developing readers or advanced students, you can find content targeted to their needs. This content level can be viewed on search and browse results screens and can also be used to sort or filter search and browse results. So one of the things that we'll be looking for is the middle school version when we're doing our exercise. So next page. So these are really great tools for teaching. So with the Get Link, you can actually push content to students or have students share with you and each other. The accessible learning allows you to go in, and if you had perhaps a Spanish-speaking person in your class or someone where English was not the first language, then they could easily go in and have the whole database translated to the language of their choice. You can also increase and adjust the font sizes, and you can also have the text read to use. So that's a nice accessible piece. Encourage learning. The highlights and notes tool can be used in many different ways to record student analysis of sources for assignments or research. What they can do is go in and color code or annotate certain sections of the material they found, and then add notes to why they felt it was important for their paper or what have you. And the topic pages, topic finder, and site tools help actually scaffold the research process from choosing and refining a topic to citing the information appropriately. Next page. So again, the share content piece in terms of just classroom instruction, I think is really important. As previously mentioned, all of the content in the Gale resource is acceptable 24/7 on any device in any location. If we look at the sharing content a little deeper, every item within the resource provides a number of options to export or share the content for later use. So if you click, Kate, the Get Link creates a persistent URL that will direct someone right back to the page you are on when you get the Get Link tool. If you click again, this shows you how you share to the classroom. If you can pull that content that you just found into your Google Classroom courses, either as assignments, announcements, and more. And then if you click again, Kate, it will show you how to send, to your email address, if you have a Google Drive account or Microsoft OneDrive, so you can view it at any time in the future. And then again, over here, you have the download and print options as well. So next slide. So that pretty much concludes kind of the overview of the Digital Maine Library in Gale and Context Middle School, the two sources that we're going to dive into next. So this is the interactive activity that I planned. You can either follow along with me as I continue to screen share and model the exercise, or you can minimize and jump into yourself. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to go to the Digital Maine Library. And then once we're in there, we're going to kind of look at the page, and then we're going to go to Gale and Context Middle School to answer the following questions. In the account of the Tea Party by Ann Holton, the commissioners of the customs and the tea consignees were obliged to seek refuge where? And then we're going to ask you, what type of resource did you find? And then if there's time later on your own, if you can find the citation for this resource, you could try selecting it and emailing it to yourself, or you could try using the get link to push content. So the topics that we're going to be using are US history and the Boston Tea Party. So if I can get out of here and somehow get to Digital Library Maine and then share my screen, I will walk you through the exercise. So give me 1 minute. So are you seeing that? Can everybody see it?
Yep, and I'm actually going to put the link to that website in the chat just in case people need help finding it.
Okay, great. So here we are on the Digital Library landing page. And if you scroll down, so up at the top, I just want to point out the features that I had shown you in the PowerPoint. So here it's showing just, this is where you would find the information about it, the A to Z index. Basically, down here is your sift and sort. Again, down here are the databases with the brief descriptions and your meta tags. And so what we want to do is, the first thing we want to do is use the sift and sort, and we're going to sort by audience. And what we want to do is, because we were talking about middle school, we're going to select middle school. And so what happened was, when we did that, that basically reset the databases to be a curated source of databases that are particularly or specifically targeted to middle school. And so what we want to do is we want to go down and find the database that I wanted to highlight, and we'll just scroll down and we should find In Context Middle School Gale. So if we just click on that, we'll open up and end up on the landing page for that database. And again, we talked about this in the PowerPoint. Here is your basic search and your advanced search. This is the landing page. Here are some of the tools that you have accessible to you. What they typically do, and this was part of that browse piece that I talked about, is they have right at the beginning some topics of interest, and they just feature these. You could click on this and there would be another one, the Olympic Games. And if you want to explore it, you can open up and it would take you to a variety of resources on that topic if you were just trying to get your students to get engaged. But you can also browse topics. And so here are some topics here. But what I want to do before we jump into the US history one, which I've selected, is I want to show you what I feel is an invaluable resource. We're not going to go there today because of time limitations, but at the bottom of the page are these educator resources. If you go to that website, you will find just a myriad amount of resources. You'll find lesson plans, tip sheets, webinars, training for each of the databases, scavenger hunts, just all kinds of things that you'll be able to utilize in the classroom. So let's go back up to US history. And now you see we're in that topic. Again, we could do a search, an advanced search. We could browse some more. We could go down through the list that they have here, which we're going to do. I'm going to pick the Boston Tea Party. And so now we get to the Boston Tea Party page. And so you typically find an overview. You can read more, and that provides the context. And then what it does is for the Boston Tea Party, it's given me a list of possible resources on this topic. And so before we dive into the primary resources, and we'll do that right now, it looks like there are 10, so they're manageable. We'll see what's included. So while I'm still really focused on middle school, what I think I will do is I'd like to sort whatever the results are by relevance, because I do find in some of these databases, because you may have advanced readers and those abilities may be a little on the line, that there may be some high school content in here as well, or at least marked as high school content. So I'm going to focus our results by content level. And so then when we look below, it will organize those by the content level and group them. So here I'm looking for that middle school level, and we're looking for Ann Hulton. So here is her account. So we're going to open that up. And so here you have the description of what that resource is, where it came from, the document length, the content level, and the type of document. Again, you have all those tools where you can push it. You can have the accessible tools as well. And then they usually start out with a commentary to provide some context. And then it's usually an actual letter or a diary entry, or in this case, it's a letter from Ann Hulton. So in here, if you read through, you can see in terms of highlighting the answer to the question, the commissioners of the customs and the tea consignees were obliged to seek refuge at the castle. And as I said before, and you could highlight that and send it to yourself as well, and make a note. And you can see that it's a letter. So in addition, you can go down, and this is where you typically find the source citation, and you can export it as well. And then you can also, down at the bottom, if you wanted to, there's an opportunity to then branch out from here and explore other related subjects. So that's it. Congratulations. We've basically done a quick, very basic search in Digital Maine Library using just only one of the databases. There are a myriad of resources available to you. It's at your fingertips. Obviously, if you have any questions going forward and want to reach out to me at any point, my contact information will be in my PowerPoint slides. I actually hope to pull together a little resource sheet and some tip sheets for you that you will be able to use as well. So thank you for putting up with some of the technology issues. Thank you, Kate, for moving through the slides. And I hope to work with you in the future for our next series.
Great, thanks, Allison. So I'm Kathleen from Maine Historical Society. Good to see everybody. Thanks for having me here. I'm going to talk to you guys about Maine Memory Network. So now I'm going to share my screen real quick and talk to you a little bit about our organization and how you can use Maine Memory Network with your students. And now it's my computer's turn to not cooperate. Here we go. Okay. So Maine Historical Society, in a nutshell, as an organization, been around since 1822. So just like Maine is recently marked 200 years of statehood, MHS is about to mark 200 years as an organization. At our campus in Portland, we have a research library, which I'll talk a little bit about today. We also have a museum where we feature rotating exhibits throughout the year, usually one big exhibit and then a couple smaller ones. We also have on our campus the Wadsworth Longfellow House and Longfellow Garden. This is the house where the poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow grew up and where he first started writing poetry. And of course, we exist online, mostly in the form of the database Maine Memory Network. So let's talk a little bit about Maine Memory. Maine Memory Network has been a thing for about 20 years or almost 20 years. It's an online database where more than 270 different collecting organizations from across the state have come together to digitize and share some of their collections. So including the organizations that you've already seen present today. So it's not just MHS, it's also the Maine State Museum, Bangor Historical Society, Presque Isle Historical Society. You won't find everything that exists at in those collections on Maine Memory Network, just some of the things that have been digitized. But again, what's really great about this is we're bringing together libraries, museums, historical societies from across the state, share a lot of our collections together in one place, over 45,000 different items. Like some of the examples that you see on the screen, photographs, documents, maps, historical artifacts, all kinds of great content. You can access and create an account on Maine Memory Network for free. You do not have to have an account on Maine Memory Network to use it. The nice thing about setting up an account on Maine Memory Network is when you find stuff on there that you like, you can save it, you can organize it into what we call albums, or where they're basically like little slideshows, and you can share those slideshows with each other. So that's a nice feature. If you want your students to create a slideshow on a particular topic, they can share it with you, with their classmates. You can go back and forth. And again, that's all free. You can use Maine Memory Network to search for things either with a keyword search or with a browse, which I'll get into in more detail in a moment. Again, you can save and share historical items if you set up an account and create an album. So let's take a look. I'm going to unshare my screen for a second and share it again to kind of show you the website itself and to start walking you through it. And no. Okay. So here's Maine Memory Network. This is the home page. When you're on the home page, you can easily access other big parts of Maine Memory Network from here. The education page will probably be of the most interest to you guys as teachers, but you can also easily access our online exhibits, features like My Maine Stories. My Maine Stories is where any individual that has a story they want to share about Maine can put it on Maine Memory Network, whether it's in the form of a video or a text narrative, an audio recording, whatever you like. I'm going to show you guys just real quick. I'm already signed into my account on Maine Memory Network. I use Maine Memory with teachers and students all the time. So I'm always saving stuff that students find interesting. So I'm going to show you a couple things. One of the things that kids always get kind of excited to see, of course, are things that they can relate to. I like to show them this image. This is a self-portrait by this photographer, Fred Dickey. This was taken in Bangor around 1895. This is always interesting for students because it's an opportunity to talk about photography and the idea of the selfie. So selfie is a new word, but the concept itself isn't very new. Cameras have been around since about, well, photography's been around since like 1839, 1840. This picture dates to 1895. For as long as we've been taking pictures, we've been trying to take pictures of ourselves. And so what you see this guy doing is something that, and I kind of date myself now when I talk about this with students, is he's holding up the camera in front of the mirror and capturing himself in the picture in the process. So this is something that we were all doing not too long ago with like our digital cameras and our phones before they got as fancy as they are today, holding them up in front of the mirror to take a picture. We've also been doing photoshopping for about as long as photography has been a thing. So here's a photoshopped picture from 1910. The gentleman in this picture, Lauren Olney, he was a photographer. I'm not really sure if this was a selfie or if he had someone else take the picture, but it's a double exposure. Lauren Olney is playing cards with himself in this picture. So even though he didn't manipulate the image with a computer like we would with, say, Photoshop today, he's playing around with what can he do with the camera. How can he manipulate the image? And it gives you a chance to kind of talk a little bit about how that technology has changed over the years. What exactly was a double exposure? And of course, as long as we have been taking pictures, we have been taking them of our cats. That's nothing new either. So here's Sylvia Bragg and Fluffy the Third in Portland in 1936. People find cat videos and cat photos funny and adorable today. And that was true in the 1930s too. So lots of great photographs on Maine Memory Network, lots of documents that are connected to great stories. So this is a letter from Elizabeth Wadsworth to her father, Peleg Wadsworth, that was written in 1800. Elizabeth was the aunt of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. She was the sister of Henry's mother. Peleg was Henry's grandfather. So here's a letter that she wrote to her father in 1800. She's talking about a couple things in the letter, but this was written in January 1800, so just about a month after George Washington had died in December 1799. And Peleg Wadsworth was serving in Congress at the time at the House of Representatives. He had known George Washington. They were generals together during the Revolution. And Elizabeth, among other things in the letter, she says to her father, I'll tell you what I want more than anything that I can think of at present, a scrap of General Washington's handwriting, perhaps his name. And then she says, Papa, had he hair? A lock of that I could be sure I would value more highly still. And then she says, I've wondered that you have not filled a sheet or two with the thoughts that would naturally arise on the death of General Washington. I've anxiously awaited, but find I wait in vain. So this speaks to a moment in history that was kind of a national event, a moment that really projected George Washington to being something of a real symbol in the United States, his death. So this is the letter Elizabeth writes to Peleg. Also on Maine Memory Network, you can see the letter that Peleg writes to Martha Washington. And I'll summarize here. And he basically says, look, I wouldn't ask. I hate to ask at this tough time, but this is something my daughter really wants. Her asking is she really admired your husband. And I'm asking on her behalf if it wouldn't be too much trouble, she'd love a memento to remember him by. And then we also have the letter. Here is the letter back to Peleg a couple months later. This is from Tobias Lear, who was George Washington's secretary. Again, paraphrasing. He says, I'm writing on behalf of Mrs. Washington. She was very pleased that you sent her condolences. We got the letter from you enclosed from your daughter. And so I've included Mrs. Washington has decided to comply with the request by sending the lock of hair, which I now have the honor to enclose. And the lock of hair is also still among the collections at Maine Historical Society, and you can see it on Maine Memory Network. And again, this always raises a lot of reactions from students. why would somebody ask for this? What this was a thing that people did back then. This is far from the only example of an artifact like this that we have at Maine Historical Society, or that you can find on Maine Memory Network. So it can spark some really interesting conversations. This is another favorite document of mine on Maine Memory Network. Thomas Burnham is giving a deposition against his neighbor, Rachel Clinton. Basically, he says, and this is from 1693. He says, I had a problem with my neighbor. I have a complaint to lodge. I thought I caught her milking one of my cows, and then she turned into a gray cat and she jumped on my roof. Because it happens. And I think we've all been there, right? So again, this can spark, 1692, I'm sorry, not 93. This can spark some interesting conversations with students. When you're looking at a historical record like this one, you see the record itself, in this case, the document, a description beneath that tells you a little bit. This description is kind of short. Some of them are a little bit longer. And anything that's handwritten on Maine Memory Network, you should see a full transcription of as well. One of the things I like about the full transcription feature is that you can view it side by side with the document itself. So again, this helps make the documents more accessible, especially with this is 300-year-old handwriting and spelling and grammar. We keep all that spelling and grammar intact in the transcription. But again, it can just make it a little easier to access, to be able to look at the transcription itself. And then finally, one of my favorite maps that you can find on Maine Memory Network. This is from the Osher Map Library. It's a map of New England from 1677. And one of the things I like about this is an opportunity to talk about perspectives. So this is a map that's drawn by colonizers, by Europeans coming into New England. And it's a view of New England that we're not, an orientation that we're not used to seeing. And it's the view essentially from, if you're coming from Europe and approaching from the East and you're coming into the West, this would essentially be the view that you would have. So it's an opportunity to kind of think about that view from the boat, if you will, and how early European colonizers, how they're looking at North America and thinking about it. And it's that approach from the water from the West. So when you're on Maine Memory Network, so again, this is just kind of a taste of some of the stuff that's on there. Let me show you just real quick. I'll go back to the home page. From the home page, again, you can take a look at those other landing pages. You can, when you're searching for something, you can do a keyword search, or you can browse. So if I click on the browse feature, again, just like with the other databases we looked at today, browsing is a good place to start when you don't know where to start. When you're maybe have an idea of what you're looking for, but this can especially be helpful with students if they don't know, they have an idea of what they want, but they're not really sure maybe the best search terms to use. That's sometimes something that they struggle with. So you can browse by topic, or you can search by keyword. You can also on the search, so if you look in the left-hand side of the page, you can look by who contributed the artifact. So what organization did it come from? You can search by town. Or again, I can just type a keyword search in here like World War I. And what comes up are a number of things. Let me hide my album. Historical items. So again, those are kind of the one at a time objects, like in this case, like some posters from World War I. It's showing 475 different historical records with that phrase in it, World War I. We also have exhibits related to World War I. So if you're looking for maybe not just one object, but a more comprehensive curated story, you can take a look at the online exhibits. Site pages, these belong to, again, the different contributors. We host site pages for them. So if you're interested in what a particular contributor has on Maine Memory Network, you can go to that sites page. These are personal stories, my Maine stories uploaded by individuals, sharing a story about World War I. And then finally, lesson plans too. So let me take you real quick. Lesson plans will come up in a search on Maine Memory Network. But again, if I go to the home page and to education, here's the landing page for all our stuff for teachers. This is where you can find so pages like our virtual learning hub. If you are interested in a virtual field trip, video mini lessons, we're talking like 5 minutes about statehood, or the Maine State Seal, or Henry Longfellow's poetry. Also some, if you're working with students on online exhibits and want some questions that they can use to help kind of guide them through the exhibit, you can find that stuff here in the virtual learning hub. And this is also where you can find our lesson plans. This takes us to our lesson plan library. You can search again with a keyword search, or you can narrow your search down by looking through grade level, content area. We also had bicentennial themes, which might be useful. So what I'd like you guys to do, we've only got a few minutes left. I put the link to Maine Memory Network in the chat. If you want to take a minute, I'm going to give you not like a real scavenger hunt, but just for in the essence of time, and just to see if you can find another thing students like to see are images of what was school like in, whether it's 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Do a keyword search or a browse and see if you can find an image of student life in or around a K-12 school from the 1900s. And once you find something that you think is interesting, share it. You can share it out loud, turn on your microphone, or you can put it into the chat. So when you're on Maine Memory Network, here, I'll share my screen again real quick so I can show you what I mean. All right, when I'm looking at a thing, I'll do that World War I search again. When I find something, everything has an item number right underneath it. When you find a K-12 student life image that you think is good, share that item number in the chat and I can bring it up on the screen for everybody to see. And yes, thank you, Crystal. So one thing I kind of neglected to feature was when you're looking at an object on Maine Memory Network, you can zoom in and out of it and really get down to those details, some of which can be really fascinating. And it's none of this stuff is really a substitute for like the student having the document right in front of them, but the zoom feature does kind of help sort of bring that experience like as close to having the object in front of you as it could. Item 13706. So I'm going to search for that on Maine Memory Network. Somebody's sharing 13706. Right. Here we've got, so you can either type that in yourself or here, I'll share it right now. Kennebunkport High School from 1900. Pictures like this come up a lot. Sometimes if I visit a classroom and I'll ask them to look for things from their own town, students are always interested and a lot of times surprised to see what the school that they're in, what did it used to look like? Was it this building? Was it a different building? They're often surprised by how much smaller schools used to be, or by the fact that schools didn't always separate for a long time. Schools weren't separated by grade, that you'd have students of all different levels and all different ages in the same class together. Somebody give me another number. If someone could turn on their microphone and share the number with me, that would be helpful so I don't have to keep turning off my screen share.
Kathleen, Kate shared the number 23667.
23667. Thanks, Kate. This is great. I love this picture. Children showing toys at the Maine School for the Deaf in 1925. And again, kind of another, so this is a show and tell. Got a little more information about this photograph. We know where the school was, 85 Spring Street in Portland, who founded the school. We can zoom in. I'll show you what that zoom feature looks like. Zoom in on the picture. We can see, the details on the calendar in the background. Some of the toys that the students have brought in to share, like, I don't know, maybe stuffed animals, a top, like a toy cow on wheels, a doll, another stuffed animal, a ball. Awesome picture. Anybody else?
Kathleen, I was looking at one that's 13543.
13543. Thanks, Joanne. Excellent. West Brooklyn Elementary School, 1921. Nice. And so this includes, it sounds like somebody's memory of the school of the description. On dark days, you couldn't see the blackboards on the other side of the room. All the windows were on one side, on the back, and on the other side of the room were blackboards. If you were sitting by the window, you couldn't see what was on the blackboard. Again, I would just say this is still kind of an issue. Light control in a classroom when you're trying to share screens on a smart board, sometimes just as difficult as achieving the same lighting effects that maybe they were struggling with in the 1920s.
We have another one from Roxanne, which is 35512.
5512. All right, Ashland High School. Very nice. Students and teachers in front of the old Ashland High School. One of the other things that I think students find interesting is how differently people dressed, whether it's just, we're talking about just 100 years ago in general, or how differently you might dress to go to school. That it used to be kind of, I think, just generally speaking, when we look back at least 100 years, people tended to look a lot more formal. Were they doing that because they knew their picture was going to be taken that day? Or was this how people, this is how everybody dressed to go to school all the time? So let me go back real quick. Thanks you guys for doing a little.
And I'm sorry, Linda, that I missed yours ahead of time, but thank you for showing us the one in for the schoolhouse in Dartmouth, Danforth.
So just a couple more things to wrap up here. Again, we've got a great lesson plan library for teachers on Maine Memory Network. Lesson plan should come up just if you use the search feature in general, but you can also go to that education landing page and search within the lesson plan library from there. Lots of great virtual options for students. If you're interested in virtual field trips, or just if you want to show your students, here I do training in the classroom for students for free and for teachers on how to use Maine Memory Network. I can teach them, this was a really fast version of it, but I can show them what I just showed you. Here's what Maine Memory Network is. Here's how you set up an account, look for stuff, save it in an album, share it. Used to do that in person, which isn't necessarily not an option right now, but if it's not a great option for you or for MHS for any reason, I can do that online just like we're doing today. So I'm going to drop my email in the chat. And if you've got questions about Maine Memory Network, if you would like some online training for your students or an online field trip for your students, don't hesitate to reach out. Maine Historical Society, everything is open right now. Our library, our museum, the Longfellow House, just on a limited basis and with pandemic protocols in place. But again, you have questions about that. I'll put my email there for you. Don't hesitate to let me know.
All right, well, thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, everybody. Kathleen wrapped us all up. I'm going to, at this point, I am going to end the recording, but then I will let you know, for those who've stuck it out to the very end, we do have a special surprise for you to work on. But I'm going to do the formal thank you to all of our presenters today. Thank you to the help and the support from the Maine Historical Society, the Maine State Museum, Maine State Archives, and the Maine State Library. Joe Schmidt, on behalf of the Maine Department of Education, I'm so excited for the support and work of all of this group. And thank you, everybody, for presenting today.